From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
For a quarter century, Superior Court Judge Michael Silverstein has been behind the bench presiding over some of the state's most high-profile civil cases, from 38 Studios to the lead paint case to Central Falls insolvency. But now Silverstein is hanging up his robe. This week on Newsmakers, looking back at the storied career of one of Rhode Island's most respected jurists, our guest, Superior Court Judge Michael Silverstein. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Your Honor, thank you very much for coming on the program. It's very rare that we have a sitting judge on Newsmakers.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
I have to tell you, Ted and I have been in your courtroom so much. When you walked in the studio, we almost reflexively stood up. You know?
Look for the court officer.
Exactly. And congratulations on your pending retirement, which happens next month. Just so our viewers understand, and I touched on it in the open there, you handle the business calendar at Superior Court. You're not presiding over, say, murder trials and whatnot. But as I said in the open, people may be familiar with a lot of the cases that you've handled. And I guess that's my first question. You have to be doing a lot of reflection these days as you near your retirement. What is your most memorable case and what is your most challenging? And maybe they're one and the same.
I think the most memorable case was the lead paint case.
Right.
White House versus the Lead Industries Association. And not only was it the most memorable, it was the most challenging.
What made it the most challenging?
We had many defendants originally in the case. We had many preeminent lawyers from around the country. We had lots of good Rhode Island lawyers involved in the case. And the issues were cutting-edge issues.
One of the things that happened in that case, if memory serves, is the Supreme Court overturned your decision, and I think the old saying on that is the Supreme Court isn't final because they are right because they're final, right? As the Superior
You don't really expect me to comment on that.
Well, I'm going to give it a shot. As a Superior Court judge, what does it feel like when the High Court overturns a decision of yours? Do you get mad? When that happens, you don't?
No, I don't get mad. Whether others do or not, I really don't know. It's a learning experience because the Supreme Court is right, and you've done something that is not consistent with what the Supreme Court has found the law to be. So it is a teaching experience for a judge. Do you like being overturned? No. But it is part of what happens. I'm sure there isn't a judge who's been sitting for longer than perhaps a week who hasn't been overturned ultimately.
And do you ever look at when the Supreme Court overturns you and go, yeah, you know what, actually maybe they were right and I was wrong, or is that not
yes, that frequently
I'm
enters
actually surprised by
thing.
that.
You're surprised by that?
I am. You know, you think that you'd be like, no, they had that totally wrong. I disagree with them. I don't know what they're doing up there.
That has never coursed through my mind.
With lead paint, were you, you know, when you are, as you said, that case was so complex and dealt with things that were new or unique. As Tim said, you sent it up. The Supreme Court had a different view on it. When you were finishing your decision, did you feel there was a risk of being overturned because you knew that the issues involved were going to be some unique ones that maybe hadn't been studied closely or whatnot?
Well, I think everyone in the case realized and recognized that these were, to a very great extent, new and novel issues. It was perhaps pushing the boundaries a little bit, and ultimately the decisions in the case were made by a jury, obviously predicated on the instructions that the court gave and a whole bunch of rulings by the court. I think that I wrote something, I don't remember now, but I think there was something like 25 written decisions during the course of that case. And obviously, like any judge sitting on a lengthy case, you make hundreds of rulings every day, perhaps, and you get them all right. No, and the Supreme Court's there to tell you when you haven't gotten it right. there's a recent decision in California of a case that was almost the same as ours that went the other way at least at the first appellate level. But our law differs from California law.
And that's a good point. You know, I remember at that time, the entire country was watching the lead paint case, and
It was the first real case that had been tried. There were other lead paint cases. In fact, some of the lawyers were involved in all of these cases around the country. It was almost like a traveling roadshow. But this is the first one that actually went to full trial. Actually, it was tried twice.
So a lot of people are going to want to know a little bit about 38 Studios, the case you handled. I know there's still a couple of pending issues on that, and I respect that there might be something, Ted and I ask you about this topic that you have to step back on, but we're going to give it a shot anyway, if you don't mind.
Give it a shot, and if I have to sit back, I'll tell you.
Okay, yes, Your Honor. I mean, we covered a lot of cases in your courtroom, 38 Studios. We spent a lot of quality time in there, and it made me feel like you needed a bigger courtroom because it felt like there were 500 attorneys on both sides.
I remember the openings when you would ask counsel to identify themselves, and I had never seen
15 minutes.
So many lawyers pop up. I'm here for this. I'm here for this part. I'm here for this.
So, you know, many feel if it weren't for the 38 what happened with 38 Studios, the Paw Sox wouldn't be moving to Worcester, right? There would be a little more trust. From what you experienced and saw immersed in the case, do you feel the state should have conducted an independent investigation?
Well, there's been a grand jury investigation.
But like along the lines of what was done with the credit unions for a governor you served under, Bruce Sunderland. You know, he had, I believe, was Brown University's president at the time, for a public report. You know, because our grand juries can't give a public report.
The Gregorian Commission.
Yes,
about, right?
Yeah.
Something along those lines with 38 Studios. Do you think there was that might have been a way to go on that?
Well, that's a political issue. It's something beyond the judiciary. We conducted a civil trial, and the grand jury sat, and that's the role of the court, obviously, the judicial system. You want to have an investigation of the nature that you're talking about, that really falls within the realm of the political and the executive department of government. So I don't really feel comfortable talking about it, and I haven't any real thoughts about it.
Did you, perhaps almost no one in the state has spent more time looking at documents about 38 Studios, listening to arguments about 38 Studios. Is there anything within the boundaries, as Tim said, of cases still pending before you can say about a takeaway you had, any lesson you saw from it you would share with people? There really are few people to turn to who saw as much about it as you did, and it still roils politics today.
A moment ago, you talked about the fact that people attribute the whatever happened with the Paw Sox to what happened with 38 Studios. Isn't that the answer to your question?
Mm. I want to talk about, and we saw this with the 38 Studios case, civility in the courtroom. You know, the civil discourse nationally is arguably at an all-time low. How about in the courtroom? How has the behavior of lawyers in the courtroom changed over the years, if at all?
It has changed. I'm a great exponent of civility in the courtroom among attorneys. And I will tell you that the level of civility that existed, I hate to say this, 59 years ago when I started practicing, was different from what we experience today.
How so?
I think there's a function of the fact that there are so many lawyers and society has become so litigious that the civility, the brotherhood of counsel that really kind of existed when I started isn't there any longer. Now, there are those who would differ with that view, but that's my view from the bench.
Do you feel like you have to calm things down in the courtroom now more than you did 24 years ago?
On occasion, yeah.
I've seen it.
I know you have.
It makes for great television, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's something they start to really fight with and show it at 6 o'clock. You went on the bench around a period of some significant scandals in the Rhode Island judiciary. There had been the Journal's Pulitzer-winning investigation of the courts. We had 2 Supreme Court Chief Justices left their jobs under a cloud. How much do you think things have changed since then in the judiciary? Do you think there's been a fundamental change in the culture that went on in the judiciary since those darker days?
Well, I think in those darker days, or since those darker days, we've developed the system of the commission that looks into the quality of the appointee, potential candidates for the bench.
The Judicial Nominating Commission.
The Judicial Nominating Commission. I think that has helped. I think it ferrets out some people who perhaps in the long run ought not be there. We still do have problems periodically, as you folks have talked about in a fairly recent case, but the system now, I think, addresses the problems to a better extent than it did before.
You were the first class of the Judicial Nominating Commission back in 1994, one of 4 judges that went through that process. What about magistrate judges? So our viewers understand you're an associate justice of Superior Court. Magistrate judges, their appointments, and they have a 10-year term, but they have pretty much the same powers as a sitting judge. Do you think, looking back now, should they go through the JNC like you had to go through the JNC?
That, of course, is a political decision by the legislature. If I were calling the shot, the answer is yes.
Why?
For the reasons we just talked about. It would ferret out any potential bad apples, or it's calculated to do that.
And the magistrate, the other thing it's important for people to understand is the magistrate, the ranks of the magistrates have grown throughout this period we're talking about, since the JNC, basically since you went on the bench, because it coincides. Do you think there's any risks to the amount of power magistrates have around right now, or do you think generally because they are serving, with a appointed judge that's reined in, kept in check?
Well, they're all on courts where there is a presiding judge or chief justice or whatever, and I think it's incumbent upon that person to control what happens on their court.
What would you tell Michael Silverstein, who was getting fitted for his robe 24 years ago, now? In other words, what do you wish you knew then that you knew now?
I wish to a greater extent I knew what was involved in the position. Maybe if I'd been smart, I wouldn't have accepted it.
I don't think that's true. I think you're having too much fun there. But what do you mean by that? How much is that a workload answer? Just how much work goes into it?
No, it's more than just work. It's a different style of life. Some of the friendships that you've established previously, you can't continue, or you shouldn't continue, because to a great extent, in 35 years of practice, I developed a lot of close personal relationships with other lawyers. Lawyers who are apt to appear before me now. So you can't continue the same personal relationship that you previously had.
I never thought about that. There's, of course, would be a conflict there for the cases that come before you, and you'd have to recuse yourself.
And a conflict, you recuse yourself, and when you recuse yourself, you're putting a burden on another judge.
So you've had to insulate yourself socially to some extent, and was that sort of you didn't foresee that when
I hadn't focused on that, no.
How about, correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't
would not have deterred me though.
Well, you weren't a trial attorney, right?
I wasn't a trial attorney in the traditional sense of being a litigator. I spent a lot of time in court in insolvency matters. A big part of my practice was representing banks in troubled situations. So if a loan went bad, the bank would call upon me to represent them, either in working the loan out or in going through a bankruptcy or state court receivership proceeding.
So I have to go to a commercial here, but to that, were there any growing pains as a judge? You're presiding over trials. Were there any growing pains going from sort of that practice of law to presiding over trials?
Not really, no. Seriously, not really, because among other things, first of all, we all have to go to the Judicial College. That is out in Nevada. It's part of the University of Nevada at Reno.
I actually did not know that. So when all over the country, if a judge is
well, it's available to judges all over the country. In Rhode Island, the Rhode Island judges, new judges, have to go there for a 2 or 3 week course where you learn what being a judge, to the extent you can learn from books and from judges who go out there and teach. But it does give you a little different viewpoint coming from the practice of law to being a judge and sitting on the bench and doing the things that that a judge has to do.
Ooh, did you find that valuable going down?
Oh, very valuable.
Yeah.
I thought that was terrific.
Judge school. I didn't know there was judge school.
Yes,
No, I didn't either.
Yeah. In fact, Judge Vogel and I both went at the same time.
That's fascinating. Well, I want to continue this conversation. Our guest this week is Michael Silverstein. He's an Associate Justice of Providence Superior Court. He is retiring next month. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is Judge Michael Silverstein. He's retiring from the Providence Superior Court next month after 24 years of service on the bench. I want to ask you about the banking crisis. You advised Governor Bruce Sunland, notably during the banking crisis. What was it like working for Bruce Sunland?
It was fascinating. He was a fascinating person. I first met Governor Sunland before he was a governor when the outlet company, shortly after it had been sold, went into a bankruptcy proceeding, and I represented some folks at that point who had a guarantee from the Sunland-dominated outlet company, what had been the outlet company. And in other words, I met Governor Sunland at a time when we were clashing.
I've always heard it was tough to be on the other side of an issue from Governor Sunland.
A very interesting man.
Yeah, he wasn't a wilting flower. Take us back to that time. Did you appreciate the enormity of the situation right off, or was it more like a slow-moving car accident and it sort of unfolded before your eyes? Or did you know right off, wow, this is a huge deal? And I'm talking about the banking crisis, of course.
We knew immediately that it was an extremely significant deal because the little old lady in Woonsocket, who once a week went into the local credit union with her $5 bill or $2 bill or whatever it was with a piece of string wrapped around it, gave it to the teller, had it marked in her book. She thought, and this was the average Rhode Island credit union depositor, thought that that $2 was put on the shelf, and when she wanted her $2, she'd go back and they'd give her back the same $2. Wasn't the way it worked, obviously.
Yeah, but the erosion of trust.
That was magnificent. It was overwhelming at that point. People actually marched on the governor's house, if you remember.
Yeah.
At that
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to ask you.
And that was early on in the situation.
Yeah, and it lasted a long time. It was a little before my time as a reporter, but it lasted for quite a while.
It lasted for quite a while. The anger lasted, and I think a number of other states went through similar situations, and I think Rhode Island came out of it more quickly than I think any other state.
You don't hear about that too often nowadays. Rhode Island emerging from a crisis like that first, right?
Right. Yeah. I have a question for you about sort of running a courtroom. In my experiences in your courtroom, you've never been a dictator type of judge. There are certainly some judges who are very strict. I'm not going to name names.
None of my colleagues.
Yes, no, they're all perfect jurists. But you've always let reporters type notes on our laptops, for example. Not all judges do that, and generally.
There's a story that can be told about that. I understand that as to one of you, and I'm not sure which one it was. My sheriff walked over. My sheriff is a somewhat elderly, nice lady, and suggested you were making too much noise with your keys.
I was tapping too hard, I think.
You were tapping too hard.
I did get reprimanded.
That's definitely Ted.
Yeah. But I didn't have to put it away. Some judges would have kicked me out.
Or more importantly, some judges wouldn't even let you have it in there.
Yeah.
Some judges, and I'll let you finish your question, won't let you have a camera in there. I've been in a federal courtroom where a judge who has since retired, I had to get permission to bring in a notebook. Okay, so these are the different. You experience one courtroom. We experience many.
Well, and I bring it up more to ask: is that a conscious choice you've made over the years to allow a certain level of openness, scrutiny, for the reporters, the ability to fairly easily document what we see in the court, a choice you've made, and why?
I think you folks have a right to represent the public. The public has a right to know what goes on in the courtroom generally. So that's the answer. I've made a conscious decision not to interfere to the extent I can avoid interfering with the public's right to know.
Was that a philosophy that evolved, or was that right out of the box?
Well, I think right out of the box, the cases I was dealing with, you guys weren't interested in.
Fair enough.
It changed over time whether we showed up. What do you think is the, what would you say is the biggest thing the average person maybe watching today might not understand about being a judge, or might misapprehend about being a judge, the biggest misperception about it?
Oh, I think a lot of people think it's a 9 to 4:30 job, and it isn't.
Yeah.
It can be all-consuming and takes a lot of time, a lot of home time, a lot of weekend time.
Well, we've heard this about you. You'll show up at Superior Court 7 a.m. You don't leave for 12 hours or whatever it might be. I've heard there's been documents delivered to you in Maine when you're on vacation so you can review them. That's, obviously above and beyond.
I actually sometimes render decisions by phone to people all over the country from Maine, with a court reporter in Providence taking it all down.
Boy, that's a relaxing vacation you have there, Judge.
Reading briefs on the beach. Yeah.
You're in your 80s, but you're still, you have so much energy. I don't know what the question is, but like, what's your secret? I mean, how do you have,
I think I stay young doing what I'm doing. I'm concerned about what happens after September 30.
Well, hopefully you enjoy yourself.
What are you? Do you have do you want to teach? Do you have a plan? Are you just going to relax for a bit?
Oh, I'm going to relax for a bit. I'm going to spend more time in Maine, and I have a son and daughter-in-law who live in Georgia. He teaches at Auburn University in Alabama, so we'll spend more time with them.
Get some more time to travel.
Yep.
Did you have a role model as a judge when you came on the bench? A person, an individual, whether locally, nationally, someone who you said, that's the kind of judge I want to be?
I don't think I focused on any particular judge, but there were a tremendous number of folks who were very helpful to me who were on the bench at the time. Judge Rogers, Judge Gibney, she was on the bench, and she was very helpful. And retired Judge Pfeiffer was my mentor. Each new judge gets a mentor as a judge who's been sitting for some period of time and helps out.
Was there any particular lesson that you recall was very helpful that they said, you're going to have to deal with this, or you're going to have to be like this with the lawyers or something early on?
Not really, no. Remember, when I came on, I had 35 years of legal experience, so I knew a little bit about it.
No surprises then,
No
maybe,
surprises.
So we have a couple of minutes left here. I always wonder, when you're deciding on a ruling, do you divorce yourself from the knowledge of what the broader impact might be? And I think of, as an example, the East Providence teachers case in 2009, where you ruled the school committee was within its rights to reduce teacher benefits because a contract had expired, and the town was in dire financial strait. Again, 2009, everybody was in dire financial straits. That decision not only impacted people in the town, teachers, but set sort of a statewide, not sort of, but set a statewide precedent, and now we have unions pushing for continuing contracts. So the ripple effects of a decision like that on one case are wide. Does that weigh on you as you're making the decision, or you focus purely on the law in front of you?
I try to focus only on the law before me. What happens after, that's not my bag.
But you must realize.
And a perfect example, I think, was my decision in the separation of powers case. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Almond versus the Lottery Commission. Mm-hmm. Again, a case of, I think, great significance. I found, in a particular way, the Supreme Court reversed me again.
Badge of honor, Your Honor.
And then there was essentially a constitutional adoption of an amendment that basically now provides for separation of powers.
Very briefly, like 30 seconds left, there's a lot of talk about, are there too many young people going to law school now? Too many lawyers, particularly in the Northeast. What advice are you giving these days if a young person comes to you and asks about going to law school?
I think they have to understand what they're getting into and what the job market is, but I encourage young people to go to law school, and I was on the board at Roger Williams when it decided to have a law school. And there was a certain amount of opposition to that, predicated on the fact that perhaps there were too many lawyers. I don't know what too many lawyers means. I'm sure, well, I think...
We have about 10 seconds left.
All right, some of the lack of decorum may be a function of the fact that perhaps there are too many lawyers.
Interesting.
Judge, thank you. We are both going to miss you very much, and thank you for your years of service. If you missed any of the show, it's online. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.
Thanks.